I sat in that courtroom, my palms sweating against the cold wooden armrest. Across the aisle, Megan stared straight ahead, her expression ice cold. 4 years ago, I believed she was the woman I would build my entire future with. Now she was trying to take everything I had, including my reputation. What I did not know in that moment was that today would change everything. But not in the way she expected. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below with your city or country. If stories about truth and justice resonate with you, hit that like button and subscribe to join this community. Now let me take you back 4 years to the moment when my life began to unravel. 4 years ago, I met Megan at a company networking event in downtown Columbus. She worked in marketing for one of our partner firms, and the moment she walked into that crowded conference room, something shifted inside me. She had this energy about her, confident, but warm, ambitious, yet approachable. We ended up talking for nearly 3 hours that night, completely forgetting about the event happening around us. By the time the venue closed, I knew I wanted to see her again. Those first 6 months of dating felt like something out of a movie. Megan supported everything I did. When I stayed late working on a difficult project, she would show up at my apartment with takeout and a smile. When I doubted myself, she reminded me of my worth. We talked about the future, constantly dreaming about buying a house together, starting a family, growing old side by side. I saved every spare dollar I had to buy her a ring. The proposal happened at the same restaurant where we had our first official date. I got down on one knee between the appetizers and the main course, my heart pounding so hard I could barely speak. She said yes, before I even finished asking the question. Our wedding was small, just close family and a handful of friends, but it felt perfect. My mother, Sandra, had some reservations early on. She said Megan seemed a little too focused on appearances, a little too concerned with what others thought. But she kept those concerns mostly to herself, because she could see how happy I was. The first year of marriage passed in a comfortable blur. We settled into a routine, learned each other's habits, and built a life together. But somewhere around the 14-month mark, things started to shift. Megan began making comments about my salary. She would scroll through social media and point out couples who seemed to have more than we did: bigger houses, fancier vacations, newer cars. I tried to reassure her that we were building something solid, that success takes time. But her dissatisfaction grew. I started taking on freelance projects after my regular work hours, trying to bring in extra income. Some weeks I barely slept 5 hours a night. But instead of appreciating the effort, Megan seemed to resent that I was always tired. She started spending more time with a new group of friends, women who lived flashy lifestyles funded by wealthy husbands or trust funds. Our credit card statements began showing purchases I did not recognize: designer handbags, expensive dinners at restaurants I had never heard of. When I asked about the spending, Megan accused me of being controlling. She said I was suffocating her, that I did not understand what she needed. One night, about 2 years into our marriage, I was working late on a deadline when Megan's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She had left it there when she went to take a shower. I glanced over without thinking and saw a notification from someone named Kyle. The preview showed just a few words, but they were enough to make my stomach drop. "I cannot stop thinking about you." I told myself it could be innocent. Maybe Kyle was just a friend. Maybe I was reading too much into a simple message. But from that night forward, something inside me changed. The trust I had placed in Megan began to crack, and no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, the doubt would not go away. 3 months after I saw that message, Travis confirmed my worst fears. Travis was a colleague who had become one of my closest friends over the years. He called me on a Tuesday evening, his voice hesitant. He had been at a restaurant across town for a client dinner when he spotted Megan at a corner table with a man he did not recognize. They were sitting close together, laughing, touching hands across the table. Travis took a photo because he did not know what else to do. When I confronted Megan that night, she denied everything at first. She said Travis must have seen someone who looked like her. But when I showed her the photo, her expression hardened. Instead of apologizing, she attacked. She told me I was never home, that I cared more about work than I cared about her. She said Kyle understood her in ways I never could. In her mind, the affair was my fault. I spent 2 sleepless weeks trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to believe we could fix what was broken. But every time I looked at her, I saw Kyle's name on that phone screen. I saw Travis's photo. I saw all the lies she had told, while looking me straight in the eyes. Finally, I asked for a divorce. Megan's reaction caught me off guard. At first, she begged me to reconsider. She cried and promised things would be different. But when she realized I was serious, a switch flipped. The woman standing in front of me became someone I did not recognize. Cold, calculating, almost predatory. She told me I would regret this decision. She said I had no idea what she was capable of. She hired a lawyer before I even had time to process what was happening. Her attorney was aggressive from the start, demanding half the value of a house I had purchased years before we even met. She claimed she was entitled to spousal support despite having a stable job of her own. Most disturbing of all, she told her lawyer that I had subjected her to emotional abuse throughout our marriage. There was no truth to any of it. But suddenly, I found myself having to prove my innocence, rather than her having to prove guilt. I reached out to Derek, a friend from college, who had become a family law attorney. He agreed to represent me at a reduced rate, knowing I was already stretched thin financially. The divorce proceedings dragged on for 6 months. Every hearing felt like a battle. Megan would cry on cue, painting herself as a victim, while I sat there in disbelief. In the end, I managed to keep the house, but the judge ordered me to pay her a settlement that wiped out most of my savings. I told myself it was worth it, just to be free of her. After the divorce was finalized, I tried to rebuild my life. I threw myself into work, reconnected with old friends, and started seeing a therapist to process everything that had happened. Megan moved in with Kyle, posting photos of their luxurious life on social media. I did my best to ignore it all. I thought the worst was behind me. Then 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I received a letter that made my blood run cold. It was a legal summons. Megan was suing me for defamation, claiming I had deliberately damaged her reputation and caused her to lose her job. She was demanding $250,000 in damages. I could not understand what she was talking about. I had barely spoken about our divorce to anyone except Travis and my mother. I certainly had not launched any kind of public campaign against her. But according to the lawsuit, my alleged statements had destroyed her career and caused severe emotional distress. Derek reviewed the documents with a grim expression. He told me this was serious. Megan had hired a high-powered attorney named Mr. Brennan, someone known for winning cases through aggressive tactics and emotional manipulation. The amount she was asking for would bankrupt me completely. Losing was not an option. The weeks leading up to the trial were some of the darkest of my life. I could not focus at work. I barely ate. Every night I lay awake, wondering how I had ended up here, being sued by someone I once loved more than anything. My mother called me every day, her voice filled with worry. Travis kept telling me things would work out, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Rumors started circulating at my office about the lawsuit. Some colleagues looked at me with suspicion, probably wondering what I had done to deserve this. I felt like I was drowning with no shore in sight. Derek refused to give up. While I spiraled, he worked tirelessly to build our defense. He kept asking me the same question over and over. If I never publicly defamed Megan, why did she lose her job? The lawsuit claimed my actions caused her termination. But what actually happened at her company? We decided to investigate. Derek hired a private investigator to dig into Megan's employment history. What we found changed everything. Megan had not been laid off or let go due to damaged reputation. She had been fired for embezzling more than $30,000 from her employer. The company had discovered discrepancies in their accounts and traced them back to her. They had chosen to terminate her quietly, rather than pursue criminal charges, wanting to avoid the negative publicity. Megan had taken advantage of their discretion to craft an entirely different narrative, one where I was the villain responsible for her downfall. When Derek showed me the evidence, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief, because we finally had the truth. Sadness, because the woman I had once loved had fallen so far. But there was no time for complicated emotions. We had a trial to win. The morning of the hearing, I walked into that courtroom feeling like I was heading to my own execution. The room was packed. Megan sat at the plaintiff's table looking polished and composed, every inch the wronged woman. Mr. Brennan exuded confidence as he organized his notes. I took my seat next to Derek and tried to steady my breathing. Mr. Brennan delivered a powerful opening statement. He painted me as a bitter ex-husband who could not accept that Megan had moved on. He claimed I had systematically spread lies about her to anyone who would listen, destroying her professional reputation and emotional well-being. When Megan took the stand, she cried as she described the harassment she had allegedly endured. She talked about losing her job, losing friends, losing her sense of self. Several people in the gallery looked at me with disgust. Judge Harrison listened carefully, his expression revealing nothing. I felt the walls closing in. Everything Megan said was a lie, but she delivered those lies with such conviction that even I almost believed them. Then it was Derek's turn. He approached the witness stand calmly, almost casually. He asked Megan simple questions at first. How long had she worked at her previous company? What were her responsibilities? Did she enjoy the work? Megan answered confidently, probably wondering where he was going with this line of questioning. Then Derek asked why she left the company. Megan's composure flickered. She said she was let go due to circumstances beyond her control. Derek pressed further. What circumstances exactly? Megan claimed it was because colleagues had heard rumors about her, rumors spread by me. Derek asked for specifics. Who had heard these rumors? When what exactly was said, Megan's answers grew vague and contradictory. She could not name specific colleagues. She could not provide dates or details. She started fidgeting in her seat, her eyes darting toward Mr. Brennan for guidance. Derek pulled out a folder. He explained that he had obtained internal documents from Megan's former employer with their cooperation. These documents told a very different story. He presented emails between company executives discussing an internal investigation into financial irregularities. He presented records showing unauthorized transfers from company accounts. He presented a termination letter clearly stating that Megan was being let go for gross misconduct related to embezzlement. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Harrison called for order. Megan's face went pale. She started speaking rapidly, claiming the documents were fabricated, that this was all a conspiracy against her. Derek was not finished. He called a witness to the stand, the human resources director from Megan's former company. Under oath, this witness confirmed everything. Megan had been caught stealing from her employer. The company had chosen not to press charges to avoid scandal. Her termination had absolutely nothing to do with me or anything I allegedly said. But the final blow came when Derek presented text messages between Megan and Kyle. Messages where they discussed the lawsuit as a way to extract money from me. Messages where Kyle suggested specific claims that would be hard to disprove. Messages where Megan laughed about how easy it would be to manipulate the court. Megan completely lost control. She stood up and started screaming that everyone was against her, that none of this was fair. Judge Harrison had to threaten her with contempt to restore order. Kyle, who had been sitting in the gallery quietly, slipped out of the room. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I told the truth. I talked about how much I had loved Megan, how devastated I was when I discovered her affair, how I had tried to move on peacefully after our divorce. I said I had never spoken publicly about her, never tried to damage her career, never sought any kind of revenge. I just wanted to live my life. Judge Harrison deliberated for less than 30 minutes. When he returned, his words were decisive. He found Megan's claims completely without merit. More than that, he determined that this lawsuit was filed in bad faith with the intention of extorting money. He ordered Megan to pay all of my legal fees totaling $45,000. He also referred the evidence of embezzlement to the district attorney for potential criminal prosecution. I sat there in stunned silence as the reality sank in. It was over. Derek put his hand on my shoulder and said something about justice being served, but I barely heard him. All I could do was breathe, really breathe for the first time in months. As I walked out of that courtroom, I passed Megan being escorted by a bailiff for processing. She would not look at me. The woman who once promised to love me forever, the woman who tried to destroy me now had nothing left. And somehow I did not feel triumphant. I just felt tired and relieved and ready to finally move forward. The first few days after the trial felt surreal. I kept waiting for something else to go wrong, for another legal document to arrive, for another crisis to explode. But nothing happened. The storm had finally passed. My mother drove 3 hours to see me the weekend after the verdict. When she walked through my front door, she wrapped me in a hug and did not let go for a long time. She had been so worried, she said. She had prayed every night that the truth would come out. Seeing her relief made me realize how much this ordeal had affected everyone who loved me, not just me. Travis organized a small dinner at his place to celebrate. It was nothing fancy, just pizza and beer with a few close friends. But sitting in that living room, surrounded by people who had believed in me when things looked darkest, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. I felt grateful. Over the following weeks, I learned what happened to Megan. The district attorney decided to pursue charges for the embezzlement. Kyle left her almost immediately after the trial, apparently unwilling to stick around for the legal consequences of her actions. She had to sell her car and move into a small apartment to afford her mounting legal fees. Part of me felt sorry for her. She had so much potential, once so much charm and intelligence. But she had chosen a path of deception and manipulation, and that path led her exactly where it always leads. Nowhere good. I started seeing a therapist regularly, something I probably should have done years earlier. Dr. Williams helped me understand patterns I had been blind to, not just in my marriage, but in my life. I had ignored red flags because I wanted so badly to believe in the fairy tale. I had sacrificed my own well-being, trying to make someone else happy who could never be satisfied. I had lost myself somewhere along the way, and it was time to find that person again. I began each morning with a run through the park near my house. It started as a way to clear my head, but it became something more. Each mile felt like a step away from the pain of the past and toward something new. I lost 15 pounds. I slept better. I started laughing again at jokes that once would have barely registered. Work became a source of satisfaction rather than escape. About 6 months after the trial, my manager called me into her office to tell me I was being promoted. She said my performance had been outstanding, that I had shown resilience and dedication during what she knew was a difficult personal period. The raise that came with the promotion was nice, but what mattered more was the recognition. I was good at what I did. No one could take that from me. I also learned to be more present with the people who mattered. I visited my mother more often. I called old friends I had neglected during my marriage. I learned that healing happens in community, not isolation. The people around me had carried me through the darkest time of my life. The least I could do was show up for them in return. I did not rush into dating again. Some friends suggested I get back out there, meet someone new. But I knew I was not ready. I needed to learn how to be happy on my own before I could be happy with someone else. I needed to understand my own worth so that I would never again accept treatment that fell below what I deserved. A year after the trial, I sat on my back porch on a quiet autumn evening. The leaves were changing color, painting the yard in shades of orange and gold. I thought about everything that had happened: the love, the betrayal, the courthouse drama, the long road to recovery. And I realized something important. Megan tried to destroy me, but in the end, she only destroyed herself. The lies she told, the schemes she constructed, the manipulation she weaponized, all of it came back to her. Meanwhile, I was still standing, not just standing, but growing, becoming stronger, learning lessons that would serve me for the rest of my life. I used to think that what happened to me was the worst thing that could have happened, but now I see it differently. Sometimes losing someone is actually the universe protecting you from a much worse fate. Sometimes the person who breaks your heart is actually setting you free, even if it does not feel that way at the time. If you are going through something similar right now, if someone is trying to tear you down or make you feel worthless, I want you to know this: the truth has a way of coming out. Justice might take longer than you want, but it usually arrives. And the best revenge is not revenge at all. The best revenge is becoming the person you were always meant to be. Megan thought she could define my future with her accusations and her lawsuits. She was wrong. I define my future now, and it looks brighter than ever. So I ask you this: have you ever had someone try to bring you down only to watch them fall instead? Have you found strength you did not know you had during your darkest moments? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched you in any way, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. And if you are not already part of this community, consider subscribing so you do not miss future content. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that the truth always wins in the end. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Whatever you are facing right now, I hope you find the courage to keep going. The storm will pass. And when it does, you will be stronger than you ever imagined. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.